Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the Live Healthy Now podcast. I'm going to ask you a question to kick off. Have you lost yourself? Is your life so busy that between your job, or maybe it's running your own business, your family, motherhood, your marriage or relationship, and then everything else that you have, that you've just gotten so caught up amongst all of this stuff that you have just completely taken yourself off the radar and you just don't feel like you know who you are anymore? So if this does sound like you, I can completely associate with that. I've been there myself, and I know so many women who have experienced this too or are going through it right now. And we're going to explore how to rediscover who you are and what your passions are and why you need to do this to be able to live that healthier, better life that you want to live. And we've got today's guest, Erin Wooodruff, with us, helping us to talk about this, to look at how you can rediscover yourself and find who you are so that you can be yourself and really live a fulfilled life. So welcome to the podcast, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. And we met obviously quite some time ago online, and I was on your podcast, so it's great to have you come and join me on mine as well and explore a completely different topic but still related to health and well-being overall. So I kick off by asking guests to share a bit about their most impactful healthy habit that they have in their routine.
That is a really great question. I feel like there's a few that I have right now that I've noticed, and the one that's been on my mind the most recently is I have been trying hard not to touch my phone before I go to bed. And I haven't had my phone plugged in by my bed for a long time, for a few years, but I've tried hard to not touch it for that hour before I go to bed. And then when I wake up, which is the newer habit, I try not to touch my phone until I've woken up, used the restroom, washed my face, got dressed, because I typically work out in the morning, and then I grab my phone. And just giving myself that 5 to 10 minutes without my phone in the morning, I've noticed a significant difference in how I'm waking up. And I'm waking up, going straight into the topic of reconnecting with yourself. I'm waking up within my own body rather than in the digital world right when I wake up. And it has made a really big impact in the last few months. And I think it's becoming a very healthy habit that is, I'm not perfect at it, but I'm starting to build and I'm really seeing the changes.
Oh, I love that because I did exactly the same this year as well.
That's
And it's
awesome.
something, yeah, it honestly has made such a difference to me as well. And like you, I'm not perfect. You know, sometimes I've worked really late at night and I just need to check a couple of things on social media. But one of the things that I did in November last year was I removed the main news apps that I used, and I don't have any news apps now or any news alerts. But I used to go to the Daily Mail app, like a lot of people, every single morning as soon as I came into any state of consciousness, I'd pick it up and I'd look at the celebrity showbiz stuff. It was the last thing I did before bed. Sometimes I'd end up going through the US showbiz and news and everything, just prolonging the time to get to sleep and deleting those, and then gradually stopping, picking up the phone on a morning and before I go to bed has been really profound in my health as well. So that's amazing to hear you've had the same
Yeah, that
experience.
is
Yeah.
awesome.
And just, maybe to help other people, because I know that this is a huge one. So many people use their phones the second that they wake up and wish that they couldn't because they hear the benefits of not doing that. Is there anything that helped you to build that habit to where you've got now?
Yeah, I would say with any habit, when we try to jump to the extremes, that's when we fail the most. And so just start super small. It might just be turning your phone on sleep mode a half an hour before. So you still have access to your phone, but every time you pull up your phone, it's on sleep mode. Or something small like starting to plug your phone in your bathroom. In your bathroom. That's where I have mine plugged in and it works well for me. It's still close enough, like if I were to get an emergency call in the middle of the night or anything, but it's not by my bed. Or maybe for you, you need a bigger baby step. You plug it in your kitchen. And so it's completely removed from your space. So figure out what works well for you. But I would say just start small from where you're at and then grow from there and start deciding what is best for me. Or maybe you have the impulse of not even getting out of your bed before you grab your phone, and maybe just try to like get out of bed before you pick up your phone. Small things like that can make big differences.
That's great. Yeah, small steps is exactly how to embed habits into your life, isn't it? So that's some really good advice there. So to get into the topic of, how you might feel when you have really lost yourself and perhaps you're struggling, I wanted to kick off with asking you to explain self-sabotage, because I think for you and I, when we're in this world and the kind of sector that we're part of, it's a familiar term, but for many people, it isn't. So yeah, let's start with what that means.
Yeah, self-sabotage can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We're not talking about hurting yourself or harming yourself or putting physical obstacles in your way in any sort of way. But when we're talking about self-sabotage, it all happens within our own mental and emotional state within ourselves. We're the ones that are creating roadblocks for ourselves. So we have an excuse, and most of the time they're very legitimate excuses not to do something or to bring ourselves back to a state of quote unquote reality, and therefore giving us this false idea that we can't do what we really want to do, or making us feel like we're never going to get there or that we're not worth it, when in reality, it feels like the sabotage is coming from outside of us, but it's only coming from within us.
Yeah, great explanation. And what we've just talked about there with the phone on a morning and bedtime, I think is a great example of something that could be self-sabotage, because, I hear the main reason, I'll not use the word excuse, but why people say they can't get healthier and build habits for their health is because they don't have time. And we hear that reason for lots of things people wish they could change and do differently in their life. They don't have time. But then people have half an hour as soon as they wake up before they get out of bed to spend on social media or news apps, and maybe have an hour on an evening and probably a lot more during the day. And that's something that, as you say, you could be doing without even realising, because it's become a habit and it's sabotaging you being able to feel the way you want to feel. And so you're caught in this trap of, wishing things were different, but believing they can't be different. And yet you're actually creating part of the issue you've got with making any change.
Yeah, definitely. The first thing that comes to mind is when we scroll on social media. I think social media is not the only place we self-sabotage, but it's a really common place. We scroll on social media and we look at everything that other people are doing, and we're mad that we're not doing it, or we're envious or resentful or jealous, and we don't stop to recognize that maybe it could be us. Because for them to do certain things, even if it's just for a picture, I have to remind myself, even if it's just for a picture, they still went to that place, or they still ate at that restaurant. They made some sort of action to get there, and it's an action that I have not been willing to take for whatever reason. And so recognize that there really is nothing stopping you from doing those things except yourself.
Is there any commonality that you see amongst the women who you work with in like, what's causing them to experience those challenges with self-sabotage?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just habits. It's the biggest, most common thing. And then also, we have emotionally, we kind of have a range of emotions that we feel comfortable with. We don't want to feel too happy, and we don't want to feel too sad or too uncomfortable. And so if we start pushing the envelope in any one direction, it's going to start pushing us out of our comfort zone. And I think it's sometimes easier. You've heard the quote, there is no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone. And it's really, really true of
Mm.
it is uncomfortable to go to a new place for the first time. It is uncomfortable to learn how to manage your finances so you can eat out more often. It's learn how to cut back on eating out so you can save money. It's complicated to learn how to change the habits that we currently have. And so in self-preservation, in a way of self-preserving, we actually self-sabotage and we just keep doing what we're doing, and then we're upset that nothing's changing.
Mm. There was so much that was literally racing through my mind as you were talking there, both from my own experience and things that I've struggled with, where I was definitely sabotaging myself, but also with clients and just people that I've, come across. One of the things that came up, you mentioned happiness, is how many people I've come across, and some of these have been clients, like without divulging details, who just struggle to allow themselves to be happy, that carry so much with them in their belief system about who they are, why they're not good enough, why they've failed, just all of these different things that they've got inside of them that have become their story and who they are, that they don't believe that they are worthy of happiness, that they maybe are trying to get a promotion, but then they go, oh yeah, but I'm never going to get it because I'm not good enough. So I'll just go through the motions and just fill the application out, but I'm not going to make any effort. And they don't realise that they're the one actually holding themselves back. And this shows up in lots of ways, doesn't it? And yeah, it's obviously, generic to everyone, but women especially seem to really struggle with this, don't they? And is there anything that you've discovered or know why it's more of a female challenge?
I completely agree with you. It is definitely more of a female challenge. And while I am not a researcher or anywhere in that field, I have read studies and many books on this. You can look up the studies that, for example, if a new job is posted at your workplace and women won't apply for it unless they're 100% qualified for all of the requirements. But it's something like 86% of men, or maybe higher, will apply for the job even if they only meet half of the requirements.
Yeah.
And I remember reading a lot about this I think it's called the Confidence Code, and it's all about women and confidence and statistically why that is. And I've thought a lot about that of we women have been structured and socialized to believe that unless we are 100% qualified for whatever it is, then we can't apply for it. So we've given ourselves this, and this is very broad, this is not individual, but it's societal, which obviously falls down into the trickling effects of individuality, of we really have this belief that we have to be perfect before we get there. And which means we're actually not taking the leaps of faith that we need to apply for the job that's going to make us grow the most. We're not taking the leap of faith that we need to just put the self-belief back in ourselves that we actually are already worthy and we're completely capable of doing it right now, and we don't have to wait for anything else to happen. And it's a really interesting concept, but I think the more you learn about it, the more you can understand it within yourself, the more willing you are to take the risks of failure, of putting your name in the application pool, of actually trying really hard and recognizing maybe I don't meet the qualifications on paper, but I definitely am worthy for that job. I know I'm 100% qualified, and being able to give yourself that belief that you're already qualified, even though like on paper you might not fit the mold.
I've read similar kind of stats and information as well on that particular example you've used, and I think I've seen that play out when I worked in corporate. I certainly was that person. And it doesn't just happen with the job, it's in every area. It could be that you don't want to go to an event or a social get together because you don't think you have the right clothes to wear, or that you've lost the weight yet to do it, or, you know, any of those kinds of things that you've deemed you need to have to be worthy. And so it all links back to that self-worth, doesn't it? And the perfection piece is something I'm personally very interested in. I've wrote some pieces on perfectionism before, and I did a podcast actually a couple of months ago about, you know, health not having to be perfect, because I think when it comes to so much of our lives, and I'll use health as the example here, you know, you hold yourself back from making any change because you think you have to be and do it perfectly. And so then we are, I guess, sabotaging ourselves there, aren't we? Because we could do something that would actually make a difference and maybe give us an opportunity to grow, develop, to feel better, to feel happier. But because we think that we have to have it all and be good enough to accomplish all of that, you know, there's no point just doing a part of it. So yeah, I do really love this topic. And then obviously, you know, women who are or anyone, you know, the podcast isn't specifically for women, but we do focus on some women's more proliferant subjects that affect women more than men. How does this play out in then how well and you know, and happy you are, coming back to that happiness, which is what we're all here for, isn't it? We want the happiest life possible.
Yeah, that's a really loaded question. I feel like we could talk about that all day. I think, first of all, before we're wanting to make any change, I'm really a big fan of the 3A system of becoming aware, accepting where you're at, and then from there you can move into a place of action. But until you have the awareness of where you're currently at and recognizing that, that's step number one, always. Too often we're trying to make all of these changes like, oh, Erin and Nicola were talking about don't touch your phone before bed. I'm going to do that. But then if you don't understand what your current habits are, it might fall flat and then you get more discouraged. So always start with the awareness piece of where am I at right now? What are my current habits? What do I feel right now? Am I happy? Do I like the way things are going in my life? Do I like the relationship I'm in? And then from there, move into the acceptance piece of this is the place where it can be a lot of struggle, but also a lot of freedom, because you have to accept where you're at before you can move forward. And it's really important to not judge this part. Don't judge where you're currently at. Just observe it and acknowledge it and accept it. And once you can do that, that's where you can actually move into a place of action of I am unhappy with my current weight. Maybe now I want to do something about it. Or I didn't realize I was scrolling on my phone 2 hours before I go to bed. So maybe I'll just try and cut it back to an hour. But until you have that awareness piece and the acceptance piece, the actions usually fall flat. So I love that it's a good, easy way to remember the 3A system of how to change. And then you can start recognizing, wow, that does make me unhappy. I don't like when I fight with my spouse. I don't ever apply when new jobs come up because I think I'm not qualified. What's wrong with that? Yeah. And then that right there gives you so much freedom to recognize, wow, there's nothing wrong other than the fact that I saw something. I see something now that I didn't see before.
That, yeah, and the acceptance and the awareness, sorry, at the start is so important, isn't it? In so many things, as you say, you know, a lot of people struggle when they jump right into the doing, like, oh, I'm going to get fit, so I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week. But they haven't gradually built the awareness and, as you say, some acceptance and then put the action in. It's just all in right at the beginning. And the awareness, especially when it comes to the mindset work that I do with habits for your health, like what we're talking about here with self-sabotage and your self-identity, is so important to have, isn't it? It's just, it's very gradual as well. It's just, you know, knowing the thing that you want to start to become aware of and look at changing, and then to just keep being aware of, like, has that been happening, you know, if you haven't noticed it, so that you can then start to notice it and have the awareness immediately when it's happening. Because I talk about, you know, once you've got that awareness, then you can start to change it and then create that change as a habit. You know, the more that you do it, it becomes more natural, so that you're not catching the thing that you don't want to do anymore and being aware of it. It gets replaced by this new thing that you've embedded in.
Yeah, I love that. And as you're talking, I keep thinking about self-sabotage and how we sabotage ourselves. We set ourselves up for failure and we sabotage ourselves to prove the belief that we already have. So if you want to create a new habit of working out every day, but you're not working out at all right now, we push it to the extremes. Currently we have the belief, I don't work out every day. I don't work out, period. That's the belief, right? We have evidence for that. We don't work out. And we want to get to be a person that works out every day. So what do? We jump straight to working out every day. And then it's going to fail because it's a really hard leap. And then we tell ourselves, see, I knew I couldn't do it. I'm not a person that works out. I hate working out. It's too hard. I don't understand all those people who work out. But there's nothing wrong with you if this happens. It happens to all of us. Just recognize you have unintentionally self-sabotaged to prove your old belief system or your current belief system. You need to always prove your belief system's right. So to look at that belief system, I'm not a person who works out, or I don't work out ever, or I'm never going to be that person who works out every day. Again, go back to the baby steps of how can you prove yourself wrong? How can you start pushing into a new belief system? Maybe it's not working out, but maybe you go outside every day. Maybe you work out once a week for 3 months and just tell yourself, no, I'm a person that works out once a week. And start building on that belief system, because that's where you're going to start realizing, oh my goodness, I can change how I'm thinking. I can change what I'm doing. I can change my future. I could be that person that works out 7 times a week, if that's what you really want. But just recognize if you're going to the extremes, you are always going to go into self-sabotage mode, because it's in self-preservation mode also.
You explained that so well. And this shows up quite often in people I work with when it comes to weight and, you know, weight loss. And you hear it, don't you, from people who've tried to go on diets and lose weight, and they lose weight, but then they put the weight back on, and they're telling themselves this story of, well, I'll never do it. I'll never be a size whatever, or I'll never weigh that much. I'll always be somebody who's overweight. This is just how I am. And I hear this so much, especially on that timepiece of, you know, I'm just a person who can't change. I just don't have time. I'm not a person that can be like you. You're different to me. All of this, and we just don't see it as self-sabotage. I certainly didn't in my story. And so it does really play out into, you know, being potentially quite damaging to your overall well-being, doesn't it? When, you know, some of this is like a tape running in your mind as well. So it's, you know, churning away, playing out these stories and beliefs that become your actions, like your thoughts and actions. And that's a lot of potential negativity to your mental, physical and emotional health, isn't it?
It really is. And until, again, going back to the awareness piece, until you become aware of how taxing that is, that's what's going to create those feelings of real unhappiness for you. And when you can recognize maybe maybe I'm creating this for myself. It's kind of a hard place to be, but it can also set you free because then you can do something about it.
Yeah.
And I love this work that we do, Nicola, because it's all about the radical accountability of no one can change you. And until you're willing to look at yourself in the mirror, and it's really hard. It's hard work. It really is, but it's also the most rewarding and the most freeing, the most liberating because you realize I can do something about this.
And I've just wrote down radical accountability X. I love that term. I'm going to be stealing that one. Yeah, it's so true. And, what I find is when you start to take control of your life by building these new healthy habits, and you know that you're doing that for you and you're holding yourself accountable, so you're checking in, you're looking at your progress, you're making sure that the thing you want to achieve is getting closer. That feeling of accomplishment is so empowering, isn't it? And so it's that, as you say, that radical accountability when we're the ones doing it, and we're doing it because we believe in ourselves. And that's where I know the self-worth comes from, when you start to be proactive about your health, because it's just completely empowering, isn't it? And I think, going back to what I said in the introduction about being lost, and how we have, again, as women, so much on our plates with jobs and careers and family and relationships and finances and the home and, social networks. There's just so much that comes together that can mean we have lost our identity. And so, this self-sabotage we're talking about could feel like it's something that you just don't even know where to begin with, because you are, in a pretty difficult place right now. How does somebody know that that's where they're at? How do you really feel that, or identify with, yes, I am unclear about who I am?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, because I think we all have that moment of self-realization. So if you've, at any point during this podcast, I think if you've had the thought, maybe that's me, or why do I do that? If you're having those questions of self-doubt, don't be worried. I think too often people think it's like, oh no, my whole belief system's going to get unraveled and I'm just going to spiral. But it's actually, again, a gateway for you to look at, am I happy? Do I like the way things are going? Am I myself? And I love that we keep going back to the phone usage, because I love technology for so many things. But if we are looking outside of us to tell us how we should live our life, then we're always going to feel lost. So if you feel like you're living your life for some other person in any way, or just to be on social media, to be present there, ask yourself, is this really what I want? Or the better question is, what do I really want? And to go even a level deeper, one of my coaches, she always asks, what do you really, 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 really want? Because that's where you're going to start finding some secrets of those secret hidden things inside of you that maybe you've never said out loud, that you realize, wow, I have a hidden desire deep in and I didn't know it was there. And I think it's really awesome because you can start recognizing, I have a desire for something else that I'm not currently doing. And once that desire starts to grow, changes are going to start to happen. And it's just really amazing to see. And just observe yourself, because there's so much that goes on internally that I think we're unaware of, especially all the information and things we take on. But as we start the work of self-improvement, growth, any change towards a healthier life, we're going to be confronted with some of our biggest insecurities, some of our biggest self-sabotage. And that's okay. Just know that it's really normal. I
Mm.
think life is a process of self-discovery, and it's a time for you to truly become and create the life that you want to be living rather than the life you think you should be living.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's not easy to start this change, this personal growth, you know, work that we're talking about. But I do believe that it's a lot simpler than what people think. You know,
Hmm.
you said there about a question your coach often asks about what do you really, really, really want? And I add on to that then, okay, so why do you want that? And why do you want to feel that way? And, you know, really digging in. That's very simple, you know, the
Hmm.
process and the type of questions. It's simple stuff. It's not easy to answer and to really work through. It can be very triggering, very emotional in lots
Hmm.
of different ways. But I think the message here is that it can be more simple than what you think to step out of that place you are right now where you potentially don't really know who you are, you know, that you just think, well, I'm a mother, I'm a wife or a partner or an
Hmm.
employee or a daughter, you know, whatever it is, you put those roles onto you and let those roles define who you are, and you play in them and think, well, this is who I am, this is who I am, I've got to be the
Hmm.
mother, I've got to be the wife, I've got to be the good friend, and so on. And it's funny, so I had a conversation with someone really recently about this who was in exactly the place I guess we're talking about. And she got really upset when it just kind of dawned on her that she didn't know who she was. And she was like,
Hmm.
I felt as though I was living the life I'm meant to and I'm happy. I wouldn't say I'm unhappy. She said, I know I'm really struggling, but I just think, well, this is life, this is who I am. And she's like,
Hmm.
God, actually, I don't know. I don't know anything about me. I don't know what I'm
Hmm.
really like, what I really connect with, and so on. So yeah, I think it's such powerful stuff, but it can be a lot simpler than you think to start
Hmm.
to work on some of this and start to get some clarity. Um, so yeah, I love a lot of what you've shared there, and I think it can really help people. One of the things that I wanted to touch on, because I know you specialise in helping women who are maybe struggling in their marriages as well, and that,
Hmm.
you know, your relationship, whether it's a marriage or not, can impact what we're talking about here with your self-worth and who
Hmm.
you identify as, and some of the self-sabotage. Like something in my own story with my, you know, relationship and marriage in the past was that I didn't realise how much it was impacting
Hmm.
my health and well-being and therefore happiness overall. I knew I wasn't happy for a lot of that time in the relationship, but I didn't really register how impactful it was being overall on me. And so that's something that you've got a lot of experience with, and you've actually had your own, you know,
Yeah.
journey and learning, haven't you, with your marriage? And it doesn't necessarily mean that your marriage has to be falling apart or in a really difficult place, but you know, it's work, isn't it? Sharing your life 100% with
Hmm.
someone. And so yeah, I'd just love to explore that a little bit, Erin, because I think that's something, you know, which I started off with when I talked about, are you feeling lost, you know, because of your
Hmm.
relationship maybe and all of the things that you have as part of your life.
Yeah, I love that you bring this in because it's a super important part of all of our lives, romantic relationships. I work with people in marriages, and there are so many things that I think anyone in a committed relationship falls into of we need to make them happy or they make us happy. They complete me. They're my soulmate. I was lost until I found them. And from the beginning, if we're not careful, from the beginning of our relationships, we can set our relationship up for sabotage in a way because we have put all of that pressure on someone else to make us happy. Like they're the ones that make me happy. They make me so happy. And not saying that people can't bring joy into our lives, because they can, but if we are under that false idea that they are supposed to make us happy, that they are the ones who complete us, that's one phrase I don't particularly love, because they're the other half of my whole. They complete me. It's telling yourself, you repeat to yourself constantly, that you are unwhole without them. You are incomplete without them. And I want to remind anybody that you are 100% whole. And when you get two whole people in a relationship, it's 200%. It's not 100%. And so if you can remember that, then you can also take back that empowerment of, and that permission for yourself of, I am actually the one who makes myself happy. I'm the one who takes care of myself. And while I'm sharing this life with someone else I love, it's impossible for me to actually make them happy. And it's impossible for them to make me happy. And it might sound doom and gloom if this is a new concept for you, but it's actually the most empowering thing, because you can recognize that, again, going back to that radical accountability, you are in charge of taking care of yourself. And they are there as part of your life, but they can't make you happy, nor should they. It's not their job. It's their job to make them happy. And there's so much to explore here, Nicola, so I can keep going, but
we'll do another episode really, just on marriage then.
Yeah, it's a very interesting concept. And when you can both give yourself that individuality and realize we're both whole people, and taking care of both of our needs is so important, it's easier to give yourself permission to not have that mom guilt that we hear about, or to hear about losing all of your single friendships as soon as you get married. There's reasons why that happens, and being able to recognize, I still need friendships. I still need to take care of myself. I still need to go shopping. I still need weekends away. I still need all of those things because it's important to me. And it doesn't mean anything negative about our relationship if I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, that was brilliant. And I hope if this resonates with you, there's something that you can think about from what Erin's just shared there, that you could go away and work together with your partner, because that's what it is, isn't it? It's a partnership. And as you said, it's not about one person making the other one happy, but it's about together, the partnership you have, creating more joy and happiness for you both. That's where the happiness comes from, because I'm sure some people might be listening going, well, of course, I do want my partner to make me happy. That's the whole point of being with them. But I think we're just saying it's not their job to, it's you together as a couple to work in harmony. And that comes when you have that self-worth, self-belief and self-respect, I think, is a big part of it. And certainly what I've seen as well is a lot of women have entered into relationships because of experiences that they've had in the past, and the beliefs therefore they've formed about their worth and so on. And again, this is all done unconsciously or subconsciously, is that they are self-sabotaging themselves by meeting the same kind of person who's perhaps let them down or hurt them before, and they've entered into that same type of relationship with the same issues. And then, and I hear this often from some of the examples I'm thinking of, the people saying, but then it's got to be me, because how can there be 5 men who were all exactly the same? It's got to be me. There's something wrong with me. But it's not, they haven't realised that they've chosen those people intentionally without being conscious that that's happening, because of those belief systems they've got about the type of person they think they deserve it of, and they keep then ending up with the wrong person. And so there's lots we could explore there, isn't there?
Oh, there's so much. I love that you bring that up, because there's so much.
Yeah, and it's interesting when people do realise this, and there's a coach who I've done a lot of work with before, and she shares very openly the story of her first marriage and the struggles that she went through. And she talks about how now she can look back and go, I bloody picked him. You know, I made that happen because of what I thought I was worthy of, and that was my story. I'd gone for those kind of men, and I basically kind of did things that made him go off and have affairs and made him go and spend my money and run up debt and so on. And yeah, then you hopefully get to that point of having that wake up call of realizing, actually, I've got a part to play in this. And as we said, I think earlier on, you mentioned, you know, this is not any fault of yours, whether it's a relationship or just you with, you know, your health from a fitness or diet or sleep point of view, you know, anything else that maybe you know is having a bit of a negative impact on how well and happy you are. It's not that you're at fault. This is just how you are because of your past, isn't it? Mainly through your young childhood and your experiences in life. And so it's getting to that point of the awareness, that first A, and just recognizing some of this to then start looking at what the next steps are.
Yeah. And if you're here, I just want to remind anybody, if you're here listening to this podcast, you've already started the work. You've already opened the door to maybe there's more, or maybe I'm missing something, or I want to change. And just give yourself a pat on the back. This is a huge step that most people aren't taking. So you are making changes, even if they don't feel that way right now. So just congratulate yourself, give yourself a moment of that appreciation, and allow the changes to happen because they are coming.
Yeah, that's good advice. So I know you've given actually quite a lot of tips and simple steps, which I'm all about, you know, as we call Live Healthy Now, to start to be able to take some of what you hear in the podcast and put it into practice in your own life. So I think Erin shared a lot of good tips. I love the 3 A's and the simple steps, you know, you gave about your new habit with the phone. Is there anything else that you would add, maybe more specifically around, you know, knowing whether you are sabotaging yourself and that feeling of being lost and stuck and not knowing who you are is something that you think might be, where you need to start working on? How could somebody begin there?
Oh, so many places. But if you've been listening, you know I'm a big fan of asking yourself questions. So to become more aware of the habits that you currently have, whether, let's just say, because this is something I struggle with, I love eating cookies. And so if you're trying to cut back on your sugar intake or lose weight or something, this is one example that you can apply into all areas. But if you have a bad habit of eating a bunch of cookies in a day or whatever, ask yourself, either while you're eating the cookies, before you're eating the cookies, or even afterwards, ask yourself, why did I do that? Or what was I trying to avoid? Or is this really what I want to be doing? All 3 of those questions are going to give you different answers, but it's going to give you the awareness of, well, I was avoiding doing the dishes, so I ate a cookie instead. Or it's going to give you an answer of, I was feeling the urge to eat a cookie, and I just had to eat it because I couldn't handle the urge anymore within my own body. Or if you ask yourself, is this really what I want to be doing? You'll get the answer maybe of, no, this isn't really what I want, but why did I eat that cookie? Why did I keep eating all those cookies? And you're going to start uncovering some stuff. It's a great way to identify the habits that you're not super happy that you have right now. It's also a good way to identify whether or not habits are helpful for you, because you're going to start recognizing, oh, actually, I thought I ate 12 cookies, but I ate 24. And so it's going to bring in the awareness piece. And also on the other side, as you start improving, we'll just keep using this example of cookie eating. You're going to start recognizing, wow, I only ate 5 cookies today and it wasn't even that hard for me. Like, that's really awesome because you've started to address why you're eating so many cookies in the first place. So it's a good place for you to start recognizing how and why you self-sabotage. And I want to offer this because I love cookies so much. I have some sitting on my counter too. And so like they I want to remind anyone, especially in the realm of food, if you love eating cookies, why would you cut them out of your life entirely? And you can still live an extremely healthy life. You can lose all the weight you want and still eat cookies. You might not be able to eat the cookies at the intake that you're having right now, but you don't have to cut it cold turkey. You don't have to cut it out of your life completely. So avoid the extremist mentality of like it's all or nothing, because there's so much more room for flexibility in there than you realize. And so just recognizing I can have as many cookies as I want. I can do whatever I want, but I'm only going to choose to eat 3 today. And know that that's a conscious choice, and you're actually going to live a way more healthy life that way.
Mm. There you go. You heard it from Erin. You can eat the cookies. We've told you on the podcast it's fine to eat the cookies. That makes complete sense. And the questions that you offered for people to use are such powerful questions, aren't they? The types of questions we use as coaches. And it does get you really thinking about it. And I did some work last year with a coach on myself and on the fact that I have a habit when it's a Friday that I feel as though I deserve to have alcohol. Mm-hmm. Likewise, it wasn't purely about alcohol, it was about sweet treats as well, and so on. And she was studying for a coaching certification, and I offered up some opportunities for her to do a bit of coaching practice, but because I wanted to uncover what was going on for me to help me, but also when I work with my clients. And they were exactly the kinds of questions that I went through, and that I would then ask myself, say on the Friday night when I went to the fridge and got the bottle of wine, was like, okay, so why am I having this wine? Mm-hmm. Is it because it's just Friday? Is it because I'm thirsty? Is it because I need the effect of the alcohol? Is it because I'm being social with someone? All of those kinds of things, would be what would then come up, to try to work through, well, okay, is this something that is purely a habit that I'm just doing because that's what I do on a Friday or a Saturday afternoon, get a nice cake, and that's because it's Saturday. Mm-hmm. And they are really powerful questions to get you to just be non-judgmental, to be curious. And as you said, it's not about going, don't have the wine, because that's never going to change anything. Yeah. It's not going to change anything that would stick and be a part of who you are. And being healthy in every way, mentally, from a mindset point of view, as we're touching on in this episode, but then physically as well, is all about, doing things that are part of who you are and what matters to you and your values, because that's how they then stick as habits. Forcing yourself not to eat the cookies or not to drink the wine isn't certainly not going to be the right starting point anyway, but it's not the mentality to go about creating new habits for your health with. So yeah, I love the analogy there. From 24 we got to, I think, 3 cookies, so that was much better. Oh well, I love everything that we've shared today. I think there's so much that people can understand, think about for themselves, and try to take something away that they can work on and put into practice very easily. And the great thing is, some of the suggestions you've heard today, especially with these last questions, aren't things that are going to cost you more time, which is that barrier a lot of people have to building new habits and taking care of themselves. It's things that you can just embed into your life, in your everyday, isn't it? The challenge is remembering to ask yourself those questions, or to pause and have the awareness. But that, as we say, the more you practice that, the more it'll just slip into place. But we're not asking you to carve out a full half an hour to sit and do a whole personal reflection on why you wanted to eat the cookies.
You can if you want, but it doesn't work for me.
I think if you were spending half an hour writing, you'd probably end up opening another bag, wouldn't you, and having the
probably
rest of
just eat while you write.
So just to wrap up then, if you want to let everyone know where they can reach out and connect with you if they'd like to find out more, Erin.
Yeah, you can find me online I'm Erin Wooodruff Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all of the great platforms, or you can find me at my website, erinwoodruffcoaching.com.
Oh, amazing. And you do all of the socials, then you're obviously very busy, keeping active on TikTok as well.
Well, I'm trying right now.
Yeah,
But
that's
you can
something that I'm
find me
staying away
everywhere.
from. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So yeah, and if you have enjoyed what Erin shared today and anything you maybe put into practice works for you, then reach out and let us know. It'd be great to get some feedback as always. So yeah, thanks Erin. I do really appreciate your time and knowledge, and maybe we'll have round two and we'll do a full episode on marriage at some point in the next few months.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it too. Thanks.